If you are the one begins by showing a wealthy man named Fong ringing a bell to call his female assistant. He asks his assistant who is the person who will meet him later. His assistant replied that the person was named Qin Fen. Qin meets Fong to sell his found tool, the CRT 2008 or Conflict Resolution Terminal, used to play the traditional game, rock, scissors, and paper. He said that the tool is revolutionary and can be used to conduct presidential elections in various countries. Actually, the tool looks less useful, but strangely Fong is interested in buying that for 2 million yuan to be used in his new business. After finishing his business at Fong's house, Qin immediately went to a cafe. Qin, who looks old, seems to have never been married. All this time, he thought about doing business and making money. Even though he has a lot of money, he really likes a simple appearance. At the cafe, he bought a piece of bread and a cup of coffee while playing on his laptop. Qin is opening an online dating site to register as a member. He wants to try his luck in finding a mate through the site. After successfully registering, he wrote down his personal data and criteria for his ideal woman. After his online dating account was created, he started making introductions and meeting with several different people. When the first meeting happened, Qin felt very surprised because the person was a man who was an old friend. It turned out that the man had deliberately used a woman's photo on his profile, so the man who asked him to meet assumed it was a woman and asked him out on a date. Apparently, the man was very shy and gay. At his second meeting, Qin made an appointment to meet a woman who works as a property salesperson. But her purpose in asking him to meet was to offer him a piece of land. Qin, who felt shy if he refused, agreed to buy the land. It turned out that the land she offered was a burial ground, not the residential land he had in mind. Then at the third meeting, Qin met a beautiful woman named Liang Xiaoxiao, who works as a flight attendant on Huayi Airlines. Her facial beauty and proportional body made him fall in love at first sight. But unfortunately, it turns out that she actually already has a boyfriend. The reason Liang played the online dating site was just to find friends to confide in. She is feeling confused because her boyfriend currently has a wife. Hearing this even made Qin feel disappointed and left her. He said their acquaintance was a waste of time because they seemed to have no hope of being together. But when he was walking outside the cafe, she walked up and asked him to have a drink at her favorite place. Although Qin initially objected, in the end, he agreed to go with Liang. They decided to tell each other and exchange disgrace at the drinking place. Because they thought that it would be the first and the last time. Qin, who initially refused to drink alcohol, somehow ended up willing to drink it. He talked a little about his past and why he hasn't married yet. Qin said that in the past, he had a relationship with a woman and they lived together in the USA. But for some reason, he left her until she was frustrated and ended her life. After learning about this, Qin felt guilty and started drinking alcohol frequently. But when he gets very drunk, he often loses control and physically hurts others. Since then, he has chosen to stop drinking alcohol. When his meeting with Liang was over, Qin looked for a mate again on the online site. But the introduction did not go smoothly. Starting from his introduction to rural women with many restrictions to beautiful women with memory disorders. During his bad mood, Qin contacted his male best friend, Liang. The two of them went on a trip out of town. There Liang introduced him to a young woman. But this woman has an unnatural condition, she only wants to have sex once a year. Hearing this, Qin was not interested in getting to know her any further. Finally, they left her. After finishing their business outside the city, they returned to their city. The next day Qin traveled alone to Beijing by plane. But when he was standing on the side of the road smoking a cigarette, he met a man named Wang, who turned out to be Liang's boyfriend. He appeared to be on the phone with someone who turned out to be Liang. Over the phone, Wang told Liang that he and his wife would board the same plane. He asked her to keep her attitude when she meets his wife, so their affair is not discovered. Qin overheard his conversation. Unintentionally, it turns out that Qin is on the same plane as Wang and Liang. Qin, knowing this, immediately looked for her in the back of the plane. He asked Liang to stay away from Wang, who already had a wife. Then he asked her to meet and drink together when he landed in Beijing. But she was silent and did not respond. Arriving in Beijing, Qin chose to spend his time in a place that could relax his heart and mind. He even bought a very comfortable luxury house by the river. While relaxing in his new home, Liang suddenly called and asked Qin to meet. But he replied that he would meet a woman he had just met from online dating today. She said she would wait at the same cafe without disturbing him. While Qin was meeting and chatting with the woman he knew, Liang didn't bother him and waited on a bench not far from them. However, Qin was shocked to the point of choking when the woman told him that she was currently pregnant and wanted to find a father for the baby. Because her boyfriend doesn't want to be responsible and goes somewhere. Although Qin is looking for a mate and she looks beautiful, he refuses to marry her. After the woman left, Liang immediately approached Qin while laughing at him. She said she wanted to introduce someone to him but he refused. But she still forced him to whine, and he finally complied. Apparently, Liang asked Qin to pretend to be her new boyfriend in front of Wang. Liang, who couldn't stand the current situation, finally spoke the truth. Qin confessed that they were just friends, then left the two of them. Liang, who was annoyed, could only cry and drink alcohol. Then she asked Wang to clarify their relationship. Because she was tired of waiting for the certainty of their affinity for 3 years. The next day, Qin still tries to find a mate and reunites with a young woman who works as a stock trader. But after the meeting, she rejected him and gave him an analogy with the stock price. She said that the selling value will go down if someone has an old age but with an ordinary appearance. When Qin was listening to the woman speak, suddenly Liang called him and said that she was around him. He immediately looked around and said goodbye to meet her. After Qin and Liang met, she suddenly asked him to marry her. She said that, if he wanted to marry her, there was one thing he had to know. Qin could only have her body because she still had Wang in her heart. Qin, who heard this, only thought of her as someone who was frustrated with her current state of love. But when he noticed Liang's face looked serious and sad, he finally asked her to go on vacation to Hokkaido, Japan. He wanted to get to know her more deeply. Long story short, Qin and Liang finally arrived in Japan. They were picked up by car by a man named Wu, who was an old friend. It turned out that Wu had lived in Japan for a long time after marrying a native woman there. So, he will accompany their trip while in Japan. On the way, Qin seeks Liang's attention by acting like a polite, kind, and religious person. He suddenly forced Wu to stop his car for a while at the temple to worship. Even though Wu had told him the temple was being closed because there was a mafia funeral. Qin, who still forced Wu to come to the temple, was even suspected by the mafia group as his enemy, so their bodies were searched by the mafia group. Finally, they returned to the car and continued the journey back. As a result of this incident, Liang laughed out loud at him. He was just silent and gave up when teased by her. After several hours of traveling, they finally arrived at the inn and immediately entered the inn. Liang immediately rested by sitting alone while looking at the view of the lake from the window of her inn. Then she accidentally saw the ferry that was sailing. She suddenly lost her mind and remembered her happy memories when she was still with Wang. When the food was ready, they immediately gathered at the dining table. Then while they were eating, Qin's words accidentally offended Liang and made her angry. He said to Wu that at this time, he couldn't have Liang because, in her heart, there was another man, so she couldn't accept him. In the evening, Qin asked Wu to accompany him to the alcohol stand and chose one of the women from the displayed photo. But when he went inside, he asked the old woman inside where the beautiful woman in the photo was. They answered with a laugh that it was a photo of them from 40 years ago. Qin, knowing this fact, asked Wu to go home immediately. But Wu said if such a thing was done, it would be considered rude by Japanese people. Finally, they stayed there and drank together while watching the performances of the old women until late at night. Soon Liang followed them there. When she walked into the room Qin and Wu were in, she laughed at the funny moment that happened to them. After being satisfied drinking, they finally went home. The next day they traveled again and stopped at an old church. Wu explained that the church is a place where people go to confession. Liang teased Qin and told him to confess all his sins in the church. He followed her directions to the church while she and Wu just waited for him in the car. When Qin was in the church, he immediately approached the priest and confessed all his sins. But the priest could only nod because he did not understand the language used by Qin. On the other hand, Liang, who was alone with Wu, got out of the car and waited for Qin outside. Wu said to her that if she wasn't serious about Qin, just leave. Because to him, Qin was a very kind person and didn't deserve something like this. Liang, who heard it, was just silent. Qin, still in the church, was confessing his sins. Because of the many sins he confessed, the priest was so tired that he sat down on a chair. Even until it was almost dark, his confession was not finished. Finally, the priest asked him to finish his confession. Feeling unable to persuade Qin, the priest went outside the church to meet Wu. He asked Wu to help take his friend home because it was almost dark. The priest said that Qin should come to a bigger church because his church could not accommodate all of his enormous sins. Finally, they returned to the inn. At night when Qin and Wu were fast asleep, Liang chose to leave them. Because she remembered what Wu said to her in the church parking lot earlier. Before leaving, she left a letter for Qin. She feels unworthy of him because, in her heart, there is still Wang. She went to the sea, which had a high chasm, so that she could jump to end her life. The next morning, Qin heard the news of Liang jumping off the brink. He and Wu rushed to the location. When they got there were many police guarding the location. Liang was immediately taken to the hospital. Wu thought she could still survive the surgery. It turned out to be true. Her condition is currently improving at the hospital. In the afternoon, Qin immediately went to the hospital to see how Liang was. Arriving at her room, Qin sat beside her to calm her down. He told her he would accompany her, no matter what, and not leave her. Then Qin went to Wu to give him the money and told him to go home. He thanked Wu for accompanying him on vacation in Japan. He told Wu that he would marry Liang because she had said that she no longer loved Wang. In the film's final scene, Qin pushes Liang in a wheelchair down from a yacht. Then she called Wang and said that now she had found her true love. After that, she threw his cell phone and memories into the sea. Finally, she chose to continue her new life with Qin. The moral that can be learned from this movie is not to seek happiness by destroying the happiness of others. Because there is still a lot of happiness out there that we can have in a good way.